Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fawn Pod, the Fawn Cast. Friends occasionally not disagreeing. This is Cody. I'm here with Justin and Brett this week, and we are getting to our second project that I feel like we've been working on for quite a while behind the scenes here. So between the Smashing Pumpkins episode last week and now the one this week, feel like I've put a lot of time into these. I can't speak for these other guys, but I feel like I know at least one of the other hosts have put more time into this one than I have. So there's that, and it's not Matt Hudson. So there's that. Um, we're talking about video game adaptations, which we'll get to in just a bit here today. But let's see what everybody has been up to over the last week. Let's kick it over to Justin. He sounded like he had a really uplifting week this week, so let's see what he's
Oh,
got
man,
for us.
living the dream.
Put the bottle of vodka down.
Uh, yeah, don't tempt me with that. Yeah, I had just an absolutely god awful week at work. I mean, we were closed for one extra day for the holiday, and it's like all of a sudden everyone loses their minds. Especially yesterday. I mean, Saturdays are short shifts; they're only like 3 hours, but it even if the rest of the week had been fine, this would still have been like one of the worst days I've had at that job in a very long time. Like just unreasonable people. I can't really say too much because confidentiality and stuff, and it's talking about people's money and everything. But yeah, just 3 hours that felt like at least six, and that seriously had me considering calling in tomorrow. Um, Aside from that, uh, before that week from hell happened, my wife and I just took a trip out of town for the holiday weekend to the Appleton and Green Bay area. Had a great time at the Northeast Wisconsin Zoo. I got to this wasn't at that one, but at a different zoo, the Young Zoo. I got to hold a wolf pup that weighed like 50 pounds, so it wasn't exactly like newborn, but still really cool experience.
Able to eat your face off.
Uh, she seemed really chill. She had been
Don't they
raised from
all
birth
until
at the
that moment?
zoo. I mean, she honestly that wolf might have been doing me a favor if it had ripped my face off. I wouldn't have had to deal with this week at
Jeez.
work.
This is
But yeah, it was a nice getaway. And it did make me realize why people don't shop at brick and mortar stores much anymore. Because I was trying to find one item of clothing for the Halloween costume that I have in mind. Just either red jeans or white jeans that I could dye red. I the Appleton area has a pretty big mall. I went to five separate clothing stores and could not find men's jeans that were. I wasn't expecting red, but I couldn't even find white. Closest I could find was like a pale, like acid wash blue, and they had rips in them already. So it's a matter of I wasted probably 2 or 3 hours, just looking around various stores. Get back home, check Amazon or not Amazon, the Levi's website itself, find something in like 10 minutes.
Mm.
So rip brick and mortar stores. That's a lot. It was a lot of wasted effort. Um, but yeah, just wanted to get that little mini rant out of the way. Brett, what's been going on with you?
Uh, well, we today, we just got in here in our little town. Deadpool Wolverine came to the theater here, and so we went and saw that again.
Nice.
One of the few movies that we went and saw twice in theaters. And honestly, I probably enjoyed it more the second time than the first time. Like I had a great time again. It was really pretty fun because it was just my wife and I and one other guy in the theater.
Oh
So
man,
that it was an it's like a very different experience, like theater wise, because the first one we went to was a packed house, opening weekend, and like everybody was just very loud and you could enjoying it. And here this experience, it was like just the two of us making sound. The other guy, we didn't hear him like make a sound the entire movie, but still really enjoyable.
He
I
was dead.
also I need to talk about Inside Out 2 a little
Oh,
bit, which we bought on digital and saw last I guess when was that? It was like the middle of the week or something like that. Um, but like I went into it expecting it to be like a decent sequel to the first one, which is a great movie. And I figured like okay, it'll be like pretty fun story. The characters are still fun, but it's going to be like a little bit like just not as well done. It might be better than the first one. It was I really enjoyed it. Um, it's I assume that the writing team on the sequel is the same as the first one. I really don't know. Um, I would assume so, but like the way they come up with like concepts for like things in the movie that directly like they make like these bits of your like psyche like into like physical things in the movie, and like the way they come up with these ideas is pretty incredible. Like I was kind of like really kind of blown away through the movie, um and how like just like poignant and like real it is. Like um I know like my wife and I both were just like on the couch just openly weeping towards the end of the
Jeez.
movie because it's like it's that like that moving. Um so I would recommend like if you've seen the first one, absolutely see the second one. Even if you haven't seen the first one, which you should, just go back and watch the first one and then watch the second one because it's worth watching. So that was our week.
I mean, that's good to hear. I have not seen the second one yet, but I do agree with you. The first one is very good. Like, shouldn't be that good, but is that good.
Right.
Um, awesome. Well, I'll have to catch that at some point then, that's for sure. I don't think anybody in my family has seen that one that I know. My week, I guess, in addition to just kind of prepping for this week's podcast, I guess just a couple things I'll plug in here. One, I did finish my book trilogy finally that I've been plowing through all summer with the Mistborn series, first trilogy, and I felt like the beginning of book three in particular was getting kind of slow to the middle of book three was really slow, and I was like, oh man, I got to push through the end of this, but I got to a point about 100, maybe 150 pages left that I was like, okay, now like I'm invested. Like they did a really slow burn of like maybe it was a little too long, but once the wheels started to turn for like where you could see where the end game pieces were starting to go, I was like, okay, this is great. So I had to like prevent myself from staying awake to read, which I always think is a good sign of a book. So, um, and I thought for the most part it landed its chops at the end as well. It didn't have without full spoilers here. I know Brett, you said you listened to it, but it didn't have
Mhm.
the typical tidy little cleanup that I kind of assumed it was going to have and a lot of fantasy genre books would have. So I enjoyed that they did something different with it. And also it kind of made sense, I guess, in its own way. And then the other thing I guess I will plug quickly here is I was at Saturday night AEW All Out in Chicago, which was a super fun time. My son and I were there, and we were pretty close to the ring. We were fourth row, so we were having a lot of fun, and we were on the side where essentially the camera would have been behind us shooting. So like whenever anybody would pose or anything, like they were like right in front of us posing towards our side because they wanted to be on the camera. So that was kind of cool. It's always nice to be on. You really notice like one side versus the other when you go to it because they try to get on the TV or the pay-per-view side so that they're kind of showing themselves, I guess, a little bit more. But super fun, really good variety. The ladies had a hardcore match that was pretty bonkers all over the place. One of them threw the other one through like the guardrail next to us, which was fun because it was like a little more breaking the fourth wall behind the magic curtain than typical. So they like came over to our section and essentially like made maybe 12 people get out of their chairs and like go stand behind the section as the match was going on. And everybody was like, oh shit, like something's going to happen right there. And it was, like 5 feet from us. So we were just on the edge of the ones that didn't have to move. And sure enough, they like one just threw the other one, like blasted her right through the wall and was like just dead on the floor in front of us. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Um, so that was pretty cool. They had a steel cage match at the end, which got just ridiculously bonkers. They used at various points a concrete block, a hypodermic needle, a staple gun, a chair, a table, some barbed wire. Trying to think if that was all they had or not, but it was pretty crazy. They they do something with like the concrete blocks. There used to be some on TV that the one guy would use, and he would like break it essentially like over a guy's head, and it would like shatter, and you're like, well, that's not a real concrete block. And they've used that like maybe twice, I think, through the years. And the whatever one they used last night, I'm not saying it was 100% for sure a real concrete block, but they definitely like made effort to like drop it in the middle of the ring, and that sucker hit hard when it landed. So it was super heavy for sure. And then when they picked up a dude and just like and dropped him on it, and like his back like hit basically like the side of the block, and they like zoomed in on the camera, and you could see like the split like right on his back just start to like kind of open up a little bit and drip. And I was like, if it's not a real block, like it's something that was still really, really painful. And then later on, they had the other guy of the two got power bombed onto the block, and I was like, I don't know how your back's not just broken right now. And they finished the match with was like a lights out, unconscious to win essentially type thing, I guess. And the guy just waffled the other guy with the chair shot to the head. And like I've been off and on watching wrestling since I was like 5, and it was like maybe the most vicious chair shot I've ever seen. Like I was like, oh my God, he's killed that guy right in front of us. Not to be confused with the match right before that one, where they actually did take a plastic bag and put it over somebody's head and hold it there for an uncomfortably long time, and the audience started chanting, "This is murder," which I gather they're getting a little bit of flack in publicity this weekend about now, since the event is over. Probably not a good look, but it was a lot of fun. We were there for, I mean, we probably had 5 hours of matches that we saw, so it was good. They always put on a good show, does AEW. Sometimes I complain they actually go a little too long. You get a little too much value for your money at times, but it was good. So, and I was really happy that it was a Saturday, because usually they do Sundays, and that like throws off my week bad, because then I have to like not get a lot of sleep the night before. But usually it's Labor Day weekend when they come to Chicago here. But anyway, so that was a lot of fun. So, all right. Well, let's talk about our main topic tonight. We are talking about video games that have been made into TV shows or movies, video game adaptations. And I think what we were kind of joking about before we started recording here is, look, we don't have a lot of notes on this per se, but I think definitely an important conversation to be had at the onset here is like, how did we go about ranking these? Because unlike, we say this a lot, but unlike the other podcasts we have done, I found a really hard time ranking this list tonight. And I guess it's because in my head, I'm thinking, am I ranking this based off whether it's a good movie or TV show? Am I ranking this off how good of an adaptation, like it takes a story and actually implements it into like a, movie or TV version of that story? Or are they just loosely taking the characters or a plot and like making it into something larger? Or if it's a TV show that's tangentially connected to a larger universe from a video game, is that fair game for this? So I feel like there's a lot of ways to go about ranking these. This is a really tough one for me, but what kind of criteria did you guys use in terms of just like putting together a list for this?
On my end, I considered, just going, having accuracy be a major factor, but then based on some of the things I watched during, the week or two leading up to this, well, more than 2 weeks, but you know what I mean. I decided, if that wasn't as important, because there were some of these that I really enjoyed a lot more than I expected, despite them not really having anything to do with the source material aside from having the same characters. So it's a matter of, I think the enjoyment of the film was paramount for me, or TV show or what have you. Whereas you can take some creative liberties, and sometimes you have to with adaptations like this. And sometimes those creative liberties are bigger than others, and usually that doesn't work, but sometimes it does. So for me, just entertainment value and not feeling lost or bored was kind of like the main criteria for me.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. And I think like my primary factor in judging these was whether it was entertaining, whether I thought it was a quality viewing experience, just as a movie and or series. Um, and then as far as like being an adaptation, I guess what worked for me was like, does it feel like I'm actually like watching the game? Like does it capture like the feel of it, the spirit of it? Um, and to a lesser extent, like how much of it is like taken directly from the game? Are there things like that we see visually that like are actually in the games, or is it just like loosely, kind of like say tangentially connected to it? Um, so that was the kind of the basis of it. They say it is kind of just like loose. I think on some of these, I judge them differently. Like one thing is judged differently than a different thing, probably a little bit. But as you say, like because there's so many variables here in like um like several of the games on my list are games that have a story to them. So like it kind of naturally goes into something, a movie or series that you can watch. And I've got a few on here that don't really have a story, and they had to like create something to make this, big screen thing.
I
So,
smell Tetris. I'm excited.
so, anyways, that's kind of how I went at about it.
Yeah, those are good thoughts. I agree. Another thing we mentioned, one of you just said this, I apologize, but I don't know if I heard it, is like whether or not we had actually played the game or not. So there's that factor too, because I could be like, this is a fantastic show, but if, I've never played the game, somebody else would be like, this is a terrible adaptation of what the game is, but it's a great TV show. So then you're stuck in like, is this a good adaptation or isn't it realm again? And I also, yeah, Brett, you said something too, which I was just counting my list here. I don't know that we've done a podcast period on here where we've ranked movies against TV shows before. So there's
Probably
like
not.
that actual, I think that's hard to do, period, because TV shows have a definite long form storytelling that movies can't always get to.
True.
Um, but then they also sometimes, as we've talked about, so like some of the Marvel properties, like sometimes fall under their own weight a little bit too. So, well, this is going to be interesting. I don't expect anybody will be able to pronounce the ones that Justin picks tonight. So, we have that going for us. I guess we do have some honorable mentions tonight. So why don't we do those first? Sounds like I have the most. So I guess I will run through mine, get them out of the way here. Honorable mentions for me have the original Resident Evil movie, which I just enjoy quite a bit. Big fan of the games. Obviously, I've played, I think, all of the mainstream ones and most of the side ones as well. But it does have a little bit of kind of like the mansion-y based you're exploring type thing to it. Mila Jovovich, I think, is an intriguing protagonist, although it's not exactly the same as what I wish it would have been with the game plots and the characters from those. But I still thought they did an okay job with the first one. I haven't seen this in a really long time, but I do recall guiltily enjoying the Angry Birds movie, the first one, which is just a ragtag group of birds and their little adventure they go on. But it's really, again, like kind of like Brett said, like, is there a plot to the game? I guess maybe, but not really. Destroy shit. I don't know. Captain N the Game Master was a favorite of mine as a kid, and I just really enjoyed that it took like characters from different properties and put them together into one. I don't want to use the word coherent plot, but one plot regardless. So that's a fun one. And then I had one in my top 10 that just fell out about a minute before we went on the air here. And this is going to be I might pronounce this wrong. Is it Onimusha?
Mhm.
Okay, yes. This is a game I've never played because Nintendo guy. And I did actually watch all 8 or 9 episodes of this, whatever it was, the whole way through, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. But I don't know that it was as good as some of the stuff I have above that, and may have been possibly hindered by the fact that I haven't played anything from this series myself. But I did enjoy the plot. I thought it was pretty tight. Um, yeah, so those are my honorable mentions. Let's go to whoever wants to go second here.
I did add a third to my honorable mentions
Go for it.
in the past like couple of minutes, so I'll go there. So the one I just added, the Street Fighter movie, because only because of Raul Julia, the and really he didn't know anything about the games, but his kids loved them. And so he took the role, even despite the fact that at the time I think he was actively suffering from the cancer that killed him. And he just gave it 110%. I mean, he'd shoot up all the scenery, but he did it in such just an effective way that made him just this over the top gonzo, villain that is quotable and memorable and really the life of that movie. The rest of the movie is not very good, but his performance just is worth the price of admission alone. Um, Number two, The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, I think it was 1993 cartoon, not the one that aired during the weekdays, but the one that aired Saturday mornings. Where, speaking of interesting adaptations of source material, this is the one that takes place basically after Dr. Robotnik has won, and Sonic and his friends are essentially resistance fighters in this grim dystopian post-apocalyptic future. And I remember it being surprisingly good for the time. The only reason it's not part of my top 10 is because I'm kind of doing the one entry per franchise thing that I tend to do. And there's another Sonic property that made it to the list. Last one, and I'm adding this because I realized today that there's an entire other realm we didn't consider, and that's the written word. Because there are written adaptations of video games out there, including one that takes tremendous liberties with the source material, but I still kind of, for some reason, like it to this day. It's a short story called To Those Left Behind by A.D. Chillman, which is based on, of all things, Paperboy. It takes Paperboy and makes it into like a story about a supernatural serial killer. It's not always the most coherent plot, but it's interesting, and I appreciate the attempt to take this obscure plotless video game and do something completely different with it. It was also the best story in an anthology that I picked up for like $5 at Half Price Books years ago, so that's why it stuck with me. So those are my three honorable mentions.
I think anybody that tried to hit those mailboxes probably could become a serial killer. That would drive you
I mean,
nuts.
yeah, it was not an easy game.
No.
I had two that I was going to mention here. And coincidentally, both of them, well, the reason I'm mentioning them is because they don't actually fit the criteria of what we're going for. So I just want to mention the Witcher show. I really enjoy it. My wife and I both enjoy it. I know not everyone here does, but we do, and I feel like it overall it is a good adaptation of what I've seen in the games, though it was a book series first. So technically, it's an adaptation of an adaptation.
Okay.
Or well, I guess not really. It's an adaptation of the books. It just has a game alongside of it. And the other thing I was going to mention is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, which again is an adaptation of a board game, though there have been video games previous to the movie. And just to mention, because it was very fun, a really really cool fun ride. Definitely something I would recommend seeing, but doesn't really fit into this category.
All right. Okay, well, here we go. I feel like we're going to have definitely overlap on this one, but also we'll see where everybody put everything, I guess. So I don't know. We'll see what comes out. But positively, when this is done, this is the most concrete guide for all of our listeners out there to go check out these properties. There's nothing else above what we're about to tell you. So
Right.
There's that. Okay.
Do we want to run an attempt at a ranking system to have like a winner at the end?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much overlap we'll have, but
right. I mean, I can do it quick just to see what happens.
If we have maybe like 2 or 3 that we each had, then maybe that's probably going to be the winner, but we'll see.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, my number 10, I'll start us off here and let you guys be the big mystery reveals at the end here. But my number 10 is I went back and in the process of having so many weeks to do this, I actually went back to check out The Witcher on Netflix to see if I had missed something all of these times. So my number 10 is not The Witcher on Netflix, nor did I actually go back to watch that. My
Liar.
number 10. Here's an interesting one. Not really, but yes, also. My number 10 is the movie Silent Hill. And my complaint with this movie has always been that I liked the atmosphere all the way through the movie and didn't like the way the ending hit. My daughter and I rewatched this last weekend, I believe, and we ran out of time with about a half hour left to finish it, so I didn't see the ending. And probably for that reason, it has a rosy memory currently in my mind, and that's why Silent Hill is getting the number 10 spot here. No, it's just I've only played the Shattered Memories for the Wii for this one, but just the concept of like the town that switches between like the nightmare world and the regular world, I think is fascinating. I think the isolation's fascinating here. The use of the Ash in the movie is like almost like I don't think it was meant to be like an homage to video games per se, but like how you have like the limited depth of how far you can see, with like the horizon kind of comes off that way too. So this one is pretty fun and also has a female cops with super short hair. So bonus for that.
Okay. You want next or should I?
Sure, I'll just jump in here. Uh, Number 10 for me, I really was debating on what to put in this number 10 spot. And in the end, it came down to three words: peak Angelina Jolie. Because you could have cast early 2000s Angelina Jolie in anything and it would have been on this list. And this is the original Tomb Raider movie from 2001.
Is that Peek or Peak? I'm just curious which way you're. Yes.
Yes, both. So I really don't have much more on that than that. I remember it was pretty decent action and adventure movie. I think it was decent quality overall. I don't. I mean the what happens in the movie I think is fairly an adaptation of the game, but what he did in the game. Though I don't think it really felt like it was the game, like it was kind of like its own thing. But overall, yeah. So and another thing that I'm like doing here is I also kind of like broke them down into like quality and adaptation rankings. So I gave this a quality rating of 7 and adaptation of 6.
Okay.
And here I am realizing I forgot about the Tomb Raider movies heading into this. But doing a bit of searching while you were saying that, none of them are available to stream on anything that I have, so I wouldn't have been able to revisit them anyway. So my number 10 is the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, the first one, which I went in with very low expectations after the whole like the teeth debacle and Jim Carrey being cast as Dr. Robotnik, and it felt weird. I mean, you want to talk about strange takes on source material? They essentially, for the first half of the movie, Sonic is more or less a potentially schizophrenic feral cryptid. Like he gets warped to our world and he spends like 10 years or whatever living alone in a cave in the woods, with like stories of, in the town of Green Hills. Nice little nod to the game. About him being out there somewhere, and it's a weird take, but it ends up working better than I expected. Some of the jokes fall flat, sure, but and yeah, Sonic talks out to himself and everyone else a lot, but he's been alone for like 10 years, so it kind of makes sense. And even Jim Carrey ended up being better in the role of Robotnik than I expected him to. Like as the movie went on, he kind of segued more into the limited personality that Robotnik ever had in the games, and it's just I don't know, it wasn't great, but I enjoyed it. And because it surprised me so much, even though it wasn't a fantastic movie, yeah, that's why it deserves a place on the list. So Sonic the Hedgehog, better than it should have been.
Hey. I'm feeling pressure here already. Boy. How many Mario properties can I stick up here? Let's see. All right, my number 9 is The Witcher on Netflix. Just kidding, it's not. My number 9, now I'll confess, we tried to shove as much as we could because I think when we were kind of joking around about doing this as a full podcast episode, we very quickly found out that there were way more adaptations than I thought were out there, especially if you like take into account cartoon versions, anime versions, things that were in Japan only. Like there's a lot of stuff out there that I didn't even know was out there, and I quickly realized I had fallen behind on a lot of stuff that came out in America as well. So this one, I believe, I could be wrong on this. Justin could correct me if he knows, but I believe this one was in Japan. Maybe it's streamed somewhere here in America. I only watched 2 episodes of it, unfortunately. Not because I didn't enjoy it, but just because I tried to get a little sampling of some different things in here before we got started. And this is the adaptation of the Nier Automata game. So I'll things I enjoyed it. Let's go with that. Things I enjoyed about this. It retains the music from the series, which is fantastic. The art style in the cartoon actually looks just about like the art style in the games, which I was a fan of as well. It has the same 2 characters in the games as it does in the TV show here. Where this fell apart on me a little bit is it actually felt like it was too faithful of an adaptation. Like it almost looked like I was watching somebody play the game on YouTube, because it was just literally rehashing more or less what the exact plot of the game was in the order that it happened. Now, I will say also, having not gotten real far into this, one thing the TV show did seem to be adding in is they started to give us some different perspectives, which I know the game has like some more stuff if you play through it multiple times, but this one, like episode 2, you started off like from one of the robots' perspective, and like the episode was kind of told like half from the robot's point of view, which I felt like they were giving me things that I was not getting in the game at all. Like they called the androids that you play as in the game like dolls, and there was like an execute the dolls screen that came up, and so I was like, oh, is that how they see them? Like interesting. This one I really did enjoy. Full Japanese. I haven't seen an English dub on this one anywhere, so you had to really, I was trying to kind of like multitask, but had to kind of also watch the screen because I had to read the subtitles as it was going on. But I did enjoy what I saw. This might be one I go back and try to check out the rest of the episodes on. Nier Automata.
Yeah, I don't think I knew that was an adaptation. Even.
I only found it on
Yeah.
one pirated site that's running an illegal stream, but
Nice.
It's probably on Crunchyroll, which means I'm kicking myself for not realizing it existed.
it was on. Let's see if I can find. Actually, I should have it right here so I can tell you. It was on a website called highanime.to.
And we're canceled for supporting piracy.
I didn't have to download anything. I'm the one on the stream. I'm just a poor innocent wanderer who happened to hit Google. I don't know.
For our listeners at home who might want to watch it legally, yes, it is streaming on Crunchyroll as well.
Supposedly.
Moving to my number 9 here is the movie Uncharted, which I found to be a pretty fun action adventure movie. I thought Tom Holland was actually better than I expected in the role of Nathan Drake. Mark Wahlberg did a great job playing Marky Mark, which he does in all his movies. Maybe a very maybe subpar role as oh god, the name just flew out of my head. Sully. But yeah, it had a lot of really good big action sequences in the movie, which felt a lot like the games. Pretty decent story, plot. And I felt really kind of captured the spirit of the games pretty well. I gave this one a quality of 7 and an adaptation score of 6. And mostly in part because I didn't feel like the characters necessarily felt like the characters in the games all the time. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, my number 9 is The Legend of Heroes: Trails of Cold Steel: The Northern War.
What is this?
You knew I had to have at least one crazy Japanese thing on here. So
I'm sure it's the only one.
I mean, well, we'll see. But this is actually kind of a side story to the main Trails of Cold Steel quadrology. So Legend of Heroes is kind of the name for the overarching series of games that are in the same world. You don't necessarily have to have played the Legend of Cold Steel's games to get a feel for what's going on, because this takes place in like a different country, and it's about basically them fighting for their freedom and their independence from the empire nearby that is, just expansionist, and it's gobbling up, other provinces and countries and stuff, all around them, and they're just trying to fight to stay alive. But it gets into a lot of like political intrigue and corruption, and nationalism versus trying to to adapt. And it's for a 12 episode show. I mean, a good chunk of it does a lot of really good world building and for this region that you don't really see in the games very much. And character building to where it gets you to actually care about these people and their fight. And then the last couple episodes, it's as if they realized, oh, we can't just keep. But this isn't an 80-hour game. This is like a 6-hour show. We have to figure out how to end this, and it really kind of sadly falls apart in terms of the overall resolution and all that. But otherwise, especially if you have played the Trails of Cold Steel games, this is worth watching, I would say. It's good to be at least passingly familiar with it, but I think even if you went in completely blind and you don't, and you're willing to kind of like pick things up as you go, it's still a decent watch. Just don't be expecting too much from how it ends. But yeah, that is my number 9.
Double colon. Joe would be proud. Okay. My number 8. This is an adaptation of the Metroid series. It's called Alien. It's fantastic. It's about a bunch of people on a spaceship. All right, my number 8. I watched season 1 of this show a couple years back and finally rewatched that season again. And I am one episode of the end of season 2 being done, but I haven't finished the last one. I'm really curious actually what the next episode has, because at the end of the episode I just watched, spoiler, they killed Dracula. So this is Castlevania on Netflix, which has 4 seasons out. So I have no idea what happens in the rest of this show, because again, they just killed Dracula. Not that he's Dracula, he probably won't come back or something, I'm sure. But that's as far as I got. And this is apparently so popular on Netflix that it even has the Castlevania Nocturne spinoff now as well. So this has inspired another TV show. I don't know if that's quite an adaptation, but it does have the character who's from Smash Brothers in that one. So I assume he's also from a Castlevania game. So, but anyway, this one's not higher because as much as I think it would be cool to have a show about like vampires and like demons and the Belmonts doing their whips and magic spells and everything, and the art is really good as well, but it's just like the setting is kind of dry, which I guess it necessarily needs to be because it's kind of in like more of an old-timey setting, which the games oftentimes seem like they were, Eastern European, maybe back a smidge in time as well. So I think they are being fairly faithful to the games in that respect. But where that kind of is like, ooh, fun for the games, I feel like when that translates into the world that you're building this show in for the TV show, it's a little less fun and exciting, actually. It's very dry. But like I said, the art style is pretty good. It's a more simplified art style than other things that are going to be on my list here coming up, but I am enjoying it now that I got back into it. So like the other thing I said here with Nier Automata, I'll probably plow through the rest of this and see what happens through to the end of Castlevania, my number 8.
You are in for a ride, my friend.
All right.
That is one I wanted to get to and like sample because I haven't seen it and didn't find time to do it, but I probably will at some point in the
The
future.
first season was only 4 episodes, and I found that to be pretty dry. And it has like the first season has like a 96 on Rotten Tomatoes, but seasons 2, 3, and 4 all have 100 even, and I'm like,
Oh wow.
something's good happening here. And 2 does get a little bit better, I think.
Uh, Number 8 for me is actually one I thought was going to be a little bit higher on Cody's list, probably a little bit higher on Justice. We'll see, but the movie Silent Hill, which I kind of internally felt like it could be higher on my list, but to be honest, I don't remember that much of it. Like I remember like the vibe of it, but I don't really remember the movie a whole lot at all, which kind of like forced me to bump it down the list. And I mean, do remember it was like pretty disturbing visuals, which matches the game pretty well. And like overall, I don't remember the game a lot either. So I feel like it was somewhat, true to the game. But I wasn't certain on that either. But I do remember that it was, pretty good overall. So this one I gave a quality of 6 and an adaptation of 7.
Okay. So my number 8 is one I only just watched this weekend because I initially thought that this was based on a card game, not a video game series. But doing a little bit of digging just on a whim, I found out that the video game actually predates the card game by like 7 months or something like that. So for completeness sake, I sat down and watched Detective Pikachu, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. Um, Ryan Reynolds, I mean, I would have preferred Danny DeVito as the voice of Pikachu, like the internet wanted, but Ryan Reynolds does okay. He is pretty much just playing Ryan Reynolds like he always does, so it feels like a little yellow Deadpool, just toned back a bit. So it's like if Ryan Reynolds were Wolverine, kind of. But no, it was kind of predictable in terms of like the plot beats, but it had heart. Some of the jokes, actually did land. The whole scene with Mr. Mime where they made a freaking Reservoir Dogs reference. I mean, I wasn't expecting that, and that really kind of won me over. Plus, it looks fantastic. Like Nintendo did not spare any expense making this movie look good. So yeah, despite never really having played a Pokemon game and having most of my exposure to them be from Smash Brothers, I was a bit lost as to like certain ones that popped up and did their thing. It's like, okay, I guess they can do that. But still, even as someone uninitiated into that whole fandom, I liked it. I had a lot more fun than I was really expecting, especially for like a cash grab kids movie. But yeah, Detective Pikachu is surprisingly good.
Agreed. Agreed. All right. My number 7 is Field of Dreams, an adaptation of Harvest Moon. That's one where they grow corn and eventually carve a baseball. But that's okay. My number 7 has been mentioned already, so look out for more overlap here. It is the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, the first one, which again I just think was a really fun ride. Just a really good way to bring Sonic to the big screen. And then I think it's Justin mentioned here the controversy over what Sonic was going to look like in that movie. And then eventually I think they settled on like basically a perfect adaptation of what he should have been in that film. Personality's fun. The way it looks is fun. I liked his rapport with, I'm gonna get his name wrong. Is it James Marsden? Is that who the guy
I think
is that
I
played?
think so.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I almost said Michael Madsen. I was like, no, that'd be a different movie altogether if he was the sidekick. He'd be like Sonic would be smoking and shooting people. So yeah, it's really well done though. It's a lot of fun. And I think you already kind of covered it, but just the people in the film played the role they were meant to play in the film pretty fun. And I like the slow burn in that series as well of like how they kind of end each movie with like a little cliffhanger of like, oh, we're going to introduce this new Sonic the Hedgehog character for the next movie, and then the world gets a little bit bigger. So, and I think there's a part 3 coming out pretty
There is, yep.
I think
soon-ish.
so.
And then I was just gonna say too, Detective Pikachu 2 comes out not too far off either. So
Oh, really?
they're still solving crimes in a future time. Yep, Sonic the Hedgehog, my number 7.
Nice. Uh, at number 7, I have one that I feel may have been overlooked by you guys. We'll see. I feel like it's kind of a bit of a deep cut. It is the series from, I don't even know, like the late 80s. Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego?
Mm.
Which I felt it was like really fun, entertaining, and like engaging kids game show. Was fairly educational and fun to watch. I know I watched a ton of it on the 4 channels we had back then. It a lot of it felt like the contestants were actually playing the game, which kind of makes it an interesting thought on how to rate this as an adaptation, because like their adaptation value is probably very high, but like you're watching a game show, so it's not like it's not like you're watching a video game. But it's one that I really remember, like from my youth. It kind of one of those things that kind of stands out a bit. So I gave this a quality of 8 and an adaptation score of 6.
Mm. I just remember them singing Contessa.
Yeah,
That's all I remember from the show.
You don't remember the theme song?
Well, yeah, but I mean,
yeah, I was
the
about to say
bad guys, and the rogues gallery.
Yeah, my number 7. What Brett said. Same ranking, same show. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
really?
Yeah, you can actually find scattered episodes of it on YouTube, and I went back and revisited it, and holy crap, yeah, it was like I was 8 years old again. Yeah, I forgot like how much work they put into the sets, because like the opening of the show, like it's pans across this mock-up of like a 1930s Brooklyn street and whatnot, and the kids are all like in period costumes and like Newsies kind of, and they just really went all in on like the just making it look fun and authentic and engaging. And yeah, it really captured the feel of the games. I only ever had Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego as a kid, but even so, it felt like a really great spot on adaptation. Honestly, the only reason it's not a bit higher for me is because some of the stuff is outdated now. Like some of those countries don't exist anymore, and and whatnot. But I mean,
you gonna hold that against them? Come on.
Well,
They're false Sudan split? I don't think so.
I mean, it's just it. But other than that, it does age surprisingly well. And yeah, just a really great attempt to make something fun and educational for kids that is just enjoyable to watch. So yeah, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego is also my number 7.
You heard it, folks. Justin's against independence for the oppressed. He just said it. If you're thinking about forming a new country out there, you're not going to get his support. So there's that.
Just
this guy.
Stay as they are.
If you're planning on making a game show for children that references countries that exist right now, don't expect them to age terribly well.
This guy liked the old radio broadcast. The British Empire was a great game, boy. Only 6 possible answers on every question, but it was fun. It was all good. Hey. All right, we're getting up to some good stuff here. My number 6 is The Witcher. Just kidding. I'll stop making that joke. My number 6 is one that my daughter, I think I've mentioned, is in love with this show, and I think this is her Halloween costume for this Halloween as well. She got my wife to watch the entire series, which is no small feat because it's animated, and my wife, in fact, hates animation. This is Arcane, which is on Netflix, and this is based on the League of Legends series, which I've never played, but I gather this is not really that much of an adaptation of what a game of that actually looks like. This is much more plot heavy and had some really interesting characters in it, I will say. And none of the characters in this show are very two-dimensional either. Like they all have problems and personality quirks, and they make deals with some people and they betray other people. And this was really good. It took me a while to actually get through the 9 episodes, but when I finally did, it was good. I don't know why I had such a hard time remembering the characters' names in this show, which sometimes that will hit me really hard when I watch something, and sometimes like I'm the one who picks up on them and nobody else does. But I had a hard time like keeping track of what some of the characters' names were in this. And it was also fun because we probably watched like 4 of the 9 episodes, I would say, as a family. Not 4 in a row, but just ones that happened to be on. They were like, "Yeah, we'll sit and watch that with you again," like even though it's episode 7 or whatever. And it was fun to see like who each of us liked in the show, which was very different. Which I don't know if that's like a personality profile or what that is, but there were characters that I definitely gravitated towards that she was like, I hate that character. And I was like, oh, and then my wife was like, they're okay for me, but I like this character. And I was like, no, what? So this is Arcane. Also, shout out to the art style in this one, which is very different than most things that are out there as well. I will say, looks very, very beautiful, and can't put it any higher than number 6 because it does feature Imagine Dragons as the music. So that's not the real reason, but they are in the show. Actually, in the show as characters as well, I might add. So
Cool. Uh, Number 6. I went with the original Mortal Kombat from 1995. Um, and what I remember this movie is it had like a lot of it was really fun and kind of charismatic characters and acting. Like not great acting. Like it's not like it'll win any awards for acting here, but the characters felt really fun. And a lot of really good fight sequences. Really good CGI for the time period from what I remember. Like pretty decent. Like things looked, realistic for that time. And really it is definitely a bit campy, but really kind of, there wasn't a I mean, I guess there is now. I feel like the original Mortal Kombat game like didn't have a lot of didn't have a ton of story. Like it had like a base, like here's what's happening, but it didn't have a lot of lore or backstory to the characters. Maybe in the first game, maybe it did. I'm just not remembering. But anyways, long story short, I feel like it really does capture like the essence of what the game was. Bringing all these people, to fight this battle against this other world. And for that, it was a lot of fun for the time, and I felt like it did a good job of adapting the game. I gave this quality of 6 and an adaptation score of 8.
Okay.
like your detailed rankings.
Yeah. Well, you're putting us to shame here. My number 6 is what Cody said. I was not expecting this to happen so often. But yeah, Arcane. I also have never played League of Legends, but from what I understand, you can't go 2 minutes without somebody calling you a piece of human garbage and telling you to kill yourself. So I'm imagining it's a pretty terrible adaptation of the source material.
Oh, that part's kind of in the show. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, Imagine Dragons. I mean, so that kind of makes up for
you
it.
lived in the underworld. That's kind of what they say to you in the show. So
I mean, yeah. But so I went into this knowing virtually nothing about it. I had seen a few of the characters here and there, but more or less blank slate. And I got really invested in this story of like street rats in the undercity, trying to just survive and get ahead regardless of the cost, and then seeing that cost, and then themes of family versus ambition versus caution versus there's all these levels that start developing as the show goes on, and it's just remarkably well done for a game that's about just like running around on a map and escorting little dudes from one end to the other. I mean, I am actually really I don't want to say invested again, but I really enjoy this world that they built up and the characters that are a part of it. So maybe not to the point where I'm going to start playing League, but if there's any other projects out there in this world featuring these people, I'm very interested. And to me, that's the mark of a good adaptation. Going in blind, walking away as a fan, more or less. So yeah, number 6, Arcane.
does your house also have a daily countdown for when season 2 comes out? Because some people in my house have that.
Not yet, but I am looking forward to it. I'll say that much.
Well, you don't have too long, 2 months.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Not bad. That's me then. Okay. Well, okay. The top half. Here we go. Arcane could have been in the top half. This was really hard to to put these down. All right, number 5 for me is adaptation of an old Nintendo 8-bit game here, which is kind of weird, but this is the adaptation of Ice Climbers. It's called Snowpiercer, and it is just kidding. All right. God bless. How many of these? Poor Brett. Anyway, my number 5 is a show we have reviewed together, and that is Fallout. So I know this was one that when we watched, some of the hosts were particularly high on. I did enjoy a lot about this show. There was some good characters in here, some slightly more questionable character work done in this one as well. There were parts to me that felt a little uneven, but I did enjoy that they, essentially created this world, put us in it, and had like a dual time period storytelling style, which I always am a fan of. Kind of like I think maybe Lost spoiled me for that because now I just like kind of expect that there's going to be multiple time narratives happening when I watch something. So I don't know that we need to go too far into this. I still think Walton Goggins as the ghoul was a little uneven to me, but Ella Purnell was pretty good in this, and we won't mention the third protagonist because we don't need to bring him back up. But
Was there 3? Was there 3?
2.5.
there was that one creature that came out of the water. Maybe it was that. But Fallout, that's my number 5.
All right. Number 5. Another movie. This one is Tron: Legacy. And this is sequel to the original movie from 1982. So they did have a story to base this sequel on, but it's still based on a game that has like zero story or lore that I'm aware of. It's literally just a cabinet game, arcade game from I think the game itself came out in 1982 as well. Like the game and the movie came out the same year somehow. Not sure how they managed that, but what I found is like this movie has like really cool visuals. It's very kind of like very sci-fi and like kind of futuristic. Like it includes a lot of like really like boxy geometric designs which match the cabinet game. And a lot of like very contrasting because it's like a lot of like black and then like neon lighting. So also it's kind of a little bit of a cyberpunk kind of thing as well to it. But it also has like a really awesome soundtrack. I love the soundtrack of this movie. I have at times just gone and just listened to the soundtrack on its own. And it really a fairly touching like father-son story to it as well. So this is one I enjoyed. I gave it a quality of 7 and an adaptation of 8 because it actually includes a lot of the features from the game. So
Nice. Okay, my number 5 is one I'm really surprised wasn't higher on Cody's list. The first Resident Evil, mainly because I remember going to see this and walking away feeling that it was the first actually good movie adaptation of a video game I had ever watched. Because prior to that, we'd had things like Super Mario Brothers and Double Dragon and just flop after flop after flop. Resident Evil changed it, though. I mean, sure, it wasn't exactly, shot for shot faithful to the game. It changed up events, changed up characters. But what it did well. It captured a lot of the atmosphere. It had its dark and kind of creepy moments. And but at the same time, it had its over the top moments too. And it just felt like a very satisfying film and a satisfying adaptation to me. So yeah, it clicked all the right boxes back then, and it's still a fun watch now. Number 5, Resident Evil.
Well, maybe it's low on my list because it's not the best Resident Evil.
Ooh.
Maybe there's a property on Netflix that's better. There isn't, I'm joking. Those are terrible. Don't watch those. But maybe movie-wise. All right. Okay, my number 4. I don't even have a joke for this one. This is a movie that I watched, I think honestly because it had decent ratings. I have never touched any of the video games in this series, and I didn't really know what to expect watching this. It's a bit of a weird concept, and I can see how they implemented the game into this movie, which doesn't fully make sense, but at the same time, in the context of the movie plot, it actually makes a lot of sense. So this is Gran Turismo up at number 4, which just completely blew me out of the water with how competent this movie was. Like, very hard to poke holes in this. There's a really pretty deep story here with family and friends and like coach mentee mentor type stuff going on. Um, it's got your villains in the movie, played by Wheel of Time's Rand, no less, amongst other villains in the movie. But this idea of like this kid who is the best at Gran Turismo, the video game, with his like souped up PC rig and his steering wheel that he buys for like, I don't know how much it is in the movie, like $700 he pays for a specialized steering wheel so he can like get it. But then they have this concept essentially, which is launched by Orlando Bloom. That's right. Legolas himself comes up with this idea that they can translate kids who have essentially played these real world tracks that have been scanned so accurately into video games and become real life good drivers on those courses when they're there because they know the turns, they know the like speed they need to do, when to brake, when to do all these things. Um, and it was both fun to see the main guy conquer the tracks like he did in the video game, and then also like see the kids like really struggle with like, oh, there's a big difference between like just playing this in front of my PC versus like, feeling 5G going around this corner at 300 miles an hour or whatever the case was. And has David Harbour from Stranger Things and other things playing the gruff like mentor to the kid, and I thought he did a really good job. And the backstory was really good in this one too, and just this one just kind of really blew me out of the water. My whole family watched it, and all 4 of us liked it, which is also really rare. Cameron even enjoyed it. Karen enjoyed it. Super rare. So yeah, I have nothing but praise here for Gran Turismo of all the games for me to pick an adaptation of.
Wow.
Yep.
All right. Well, I will definitely have to go watch that. That is another one I had on my list of things to try and watch and did not get to. So, number 4, I was tempted to break the rules here and just stuff the entire series into this slot because I didn't want to separate them. But if pressed, I would pick the first movie of the series, and this is Resident Evil. So I found these movies to be like really fun and exciting action movies. Had enough like not scares necessarily, but tension, and like really like the visuals were scary and like very visceral, and but it wasn't like jump scary kind of things or like jumping out of your seat kind of thing. But the stories do like kind of separate themselves from the plot of the games and get a bit wild, especially in the later movies. But still kind of like holds true to like the canon of what the games lay down, like the base of what is going on. And the monster designs were really good. Everything like looked good, like kind of true to the games. And yeah, so I'm giving this I gave it a quality score of 7 and an adaptation score of 7 as
well. Okay, my number 4 has already been mentioned. The Fallout TV show. I've thinking about it, I've only ever played the odd numbered entries in this series somehow. So I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the source material, but the games I played were enjoyable. And so was the show. It got the overall feel of the wasteland pretty well, I think, as well as the vaults and the weird experiments and clandestine stuff that was going on in them. Not a perfect adaptation, but the parts that it did well, I think it did really well. The parts that didn't are the ones we're not talking about, as per Cody.
Just two.
But yeah, overall, it's one of the more solid adaptations I've seen, and I was a little leery going into it because the Fallout franchise has changed hands. Like even the games a couple of times during its history, and now it's in the hands of people making a show. I really I had a lot of reservations going in, but I the end results I was very satisfied with. I definitely watch it again.
All right. Yeah, good stuff. Um, top three for me, one, two, and three. These could maybe be in different positions, which again is pretty rare for the top of a list like this, but they have different reasons. They're all very different scoring mechanisms to these top three. And this is why I really feel like, again, how you rate these things, like Brett said, is really different from one to the next one. So depending on if you had said like, here's your criteria, one of these three would have been on top. If you said a different one of these three probably would have been on top. But this is how I'm going to shake them out, I think. So my number three falls into a little bit of territory that we did talk about at some point in our group chat a while back, and I don't think we reached an official conclusion on this, and I felt okay to put it in the list all the way up here at number three. Let me just ask you something. Just because you're a bad guy, does that make you a bad guy? Wreck-It Ralph is my number three, way up at the top. Now, this is not a strict video game adaptation. It is a movie about a video game, which is a whole nother genre of films that are out there. But this one, I feel like at least is a hybrid because it does feature notable video game characters in its plot line. Specifically, I just thought off the top of my head here again I rewatched this just this past weekend, but like Qbert is a homeless little guy on the side of the alleyway there in the middle of the hub, and Tapper is where they go all for their drinks, and they get advice from Tapper, and Rue and Ken are fighting in the background, and then they go off to get drinks at Tapper's, and they get mad, and then Pac-Man is featured in a couple spots as well, and then of course I think it was actually pretty revolutionary when the movie came out. I actually was thinking about this rewatching it. I borrowed a kid to go watch this movie because my kids were not old enough yet. And so Karen had a coworker who had a son that was like 4 years older than our kids. And I was like, I'll take that kid to the movie theater to go watch this movie. And so I did, and we went and watched the movie. But it had the like, what's it called? Bad Guys Anonymous or something. There was a name for it, but essentially the circle. And it just had like all of these famous villains, all of the like Bowser was sitting with Dr. Robotnik, and like just that concept alone blew my mind for rights usage. And then Zangief was there, and then Kano from Mortal Kombat were sitting with them, and I'm like, what is happening here? And then there were a lot of like more obscure ones, and I'm probably forgetting that one of the ghosts from Pac-Man, I think, was the host of the meeting, and I don't know, there's like 10 or 12 in the circle. But it is a fantastic movie. The cast is really, really fun in this, and it's not a strict adaptation, but I did count it because it had a lot of the famous people in the story. So it's not Pixels with Adam Sandler. Let's just put it that way.
How dare you bring that up?
I haven't seen that actually, but
Keep it that
Wreck-It
way.
Ralph.
Yeah.
I now that you say that, I kind of agree that like it has so many actual game characters in the movie that while it kind of bends the rules a bit, I think that it could fit into this episode here fine. So that was one that like came to mind, but I was like, no, I can't use that because it's not an actual game. But number three, I have Super Mario Brothers movie from 23, the new one. We've talked about this a lot on previous episodes, so I'm not going to go into a deep dive in this, but it's such a fun movie, just great humor, just visually very impressive, really fun character acting, tons of nostalgia and Easter eggs crammed into it. The story is fine for what it's doing. Didn't reach too far with the story, it was such a fun ride, and we've watched it so many times here at home, since then. Just everybody really loves it. I gave this a quality of 8 and an adaptation of 9.
Ooh. Wow.
Well, yeah.
I'm trying to do the math on what's on top of your list here.
Well, you might not have to count too much because here we are again. What Brett said. Um,
Tomb
my number
Raider?
three is no.
Oh.
Number three is also Super Mario Brothers. The other one, no,
Oh,
no, the one from 2023. This was just a joy to experience. I don't need to say too much, considering, yeah, it's a great movie. Just whether you're a kid or just a kid at heart, fantastic adaptation of the source material.
Well, you're wrong. Just kidding. It is good. Look at you putting Mario way up that high. Wow.
I know.
And a Pokemon? What's going on here? My
I
goodness.
I, I don't know. Maybe I should go see the doctor.
It's very possible. Okay, same debate I was just after these top three, but now I'm down to the top two. So this one I chose here at number two. Um, I can't really imagine too much better of a game adaptation of a game that has a plot which I've never played or experienced. Up here at number two. So I have The Last of Us here at number two on my list. And it was, I don't remember what it was, like 6 episodes or something, but it was really, really well done, really fantastic. Um, Casting for the most part seemed to be pretty great in terms of like I've never played the games, but just in terms of who they actually cast to play the role seemed pretty good. The little girl was a little annoying to me, but that's neither here nor there. Everything else was good about this. The tension in the story was really good. The dramatic beats were fantastic, as we talked about very extensively in our review of that show. And yeah, so if you're looking for like something deep and meaningful that was adapted, this is my number two, The Last of Us, which is going to contrast with my number one. But there we go.
all righty. Number two, I have the Fallout series, with Justin just mentioned a bit ago. And again, it's another one which we did a whole recap on, so I'm not going to go too deep into it here, but just really, really did a great job of capturing the bleakness and the humor of the world of these games. It's just a really fun and an interesting original story. It does an excellent job adapting the world, but it's got, this is an original story that's not, part of the other games. And it's pretty cool and interesting. Um, the characters are really fun. A lot of the like really charismatic acting here. Visually, it looks great. It's for being a like a post-apocalyptic show. It actually has pretty bright colors and pops in a lot of places. It's not. It really does a good job of capturing like I said again, like the bleakness of this world while not looking like so bleak at the same time. It's pretty interesting about that. But yeah, I give this a quality of 9 and an adaptation of 9.
Hmm.
Nice. Okay, my number two has also been mentioned already, and that is the Netflix adaptation of Castlevania. It's
Oh,
this one I just loved from beginning to end, pretty much. Visually, it looks great. It captures a lot of the feel of the games with that dark gothic atmosphere, but it injects some color here and there to lighten things up when it needs to. There's a lot of little references for fans. So if you have played the series extensively, you'll pick out little things here and there, which is great. And it has just this nice blend of action and comedy at times, and that gothic horror element. And yeah, just a really, really solid interpretation of the source material. It to the extent that it even like adds some emotional hits here and there, and stakes that feel like they really matter. Versus just somehow Dracula has returned and you have to kill him again. But no, I just really enjoyed this. And yeah, it came close to being my number one in all honesty. So there's that.
it's interesting. Like the games I feel like, and I haven't played all of them, but maybe three or four, maybe five even of them total. But it's interesting, like I don't associate like a deep plot with those games, so it's kind of interesting how they take it. And because I mean the games are essentially like you versus, some sort of a map that you have to go fight minions on, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
But this is definitely like showing the humanity that's thrown into the middle of that battle and like, other things beyond that. Or even in just the first two seasons, like, there's the evil side, but even the evil side is not entirely on the same page as the evil side. So
Right.
um, yeah, it's interesting. I'm happy you said the rest is good the rest of the way too, because I think that one is done, correct? That one ended after four.
I believe so.
I think that one is complete.
And
So
yeah, now there's the Nocturne thing, which I think is a spin-off, or is
yeah.
that season? Okay,
I
yeah,
almost
this one.
watched one of those just to see what that was like too, but I did not. I
Yeah.
wanted to go back to Fallout for just a second before I do my number one. When I watched the TV show and we reviewed it, there was a lot of chatter about like humor in the games, and I know there is with like the perk system, but I'm trying to think like, because I went back and play Fallout 4 again this week too, and it's like it's not a very funny game. Like I don't know where the humor is that you were all like so excited about in the TV show, other than like the perks, that are like, da, 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 now you can do this and do this thing, and
Um,
doesn't seem real funny to me. I don't know. Everybody's like,
I
well,
played four, so I can't comment on that. But I know
yeah,
like in a lot of in the games that I have played, it's a lot of like the character interactions where a lot of the humor comes from. It's like these just absurd characters with like these crazy
mhm.
ideas and things like that.
mhm. Yeah, and certain dialogue choices depending on like what perks you have. I mean, you might get some really outlandish things you can say to people or do in conversations, and that can
Okay.
lead to some funny moments. But yeah, it's there. You just have to sometimes dig for it a little bit.
Okay. I know every once in a while you find like something on one of like the terminals and you're like reading a log entry or something, and you're like, oh, that's kind of a funny story, but doesn't seem to be quite as much in the main game. I don't know. But anyway, let's jump back in here. Number one for me is The Witcher on Netflix. Just kidding. All right. No, so like I said, number three was not really a true video game adaptation. Two was the dramatic one. One, I gotta go with Super Mario Bros., but this was really, really close between the two, which probably says a ton about The Last of Us, if I'm being 100% honest. Mario's probably helped by the fact that this is another one I really had intended to watch again before this podcast because I still have only seen it the very first time in the theater.
Oh,
And I haven't seen it since then, so I don't know how it would do compared to what my image of it in my head is at this point. Um, but I put it at number one, even though obviously, it's not the deepest plot in the world. I guess primarily because of what I think it gets bonus points for, and that it is since it's video game adaptations is our category. Mario games have sold 900 million units. They're closing in on a billion, and just like Last of Us, for example, has 47 million. So obviously, we're talking about two entirely different franchises here in terms of size, just to compare those two. But I think with Nintendo's flop of the 93 movie and the fact that it took them 30 years to like make another proper adaptation of one of their video games, and they did it so correctly this time, I think as you both have mentioned, casting was pretty decent, if not really good, I would say, and just the amount of little Easter eggs they threw in there for everybody and the vibrant colors they have in here and just like the sounds and the music and the um even just like how they added in like the little tiny battle that was like Smash Brothers or like the little Mario Kart thing that was in there. And I think beyond all that, I probably have to say it's number one for in my importance at least, just because I think it's going to open the doors now for Nintendo to start to pump out some other IPs. Hopefully, which include a decent Legend of Zelda game adaptation, whatever they do with that. I hope it's live action, but we'll see. But they have so many properties that just, I don't know. Nintendo's weird because they have all these ways they could cash money in off their IP, and as much as they do, they don't, which just drives me nuts. Like, I know we won't get into this topic, but Funko Pops are a good example of this, of how Nintendo makes their little amiibo guys, right, with all the people in Smash Brothers and stuff and sells them for $15-20 a pop. But like those are nowhere near as popular, but like they refuse to do Funko Pops because they sell their own little things. And I'm like, all of your fans would buy both of those. Like, I don't know who thinks that's a good marketing choice. Like, it's just mind-boggling to me. Or like this movie, like, why is there not an Animal Crossing movie and a Donkey Kong movie and a Zelda movie and a whatever movie? F-Zero. I mean, you could go down the line over and over and come up with so many of these animated or live action, whatever they want to do. So it's mind-boggling. But this gives me hope for the future, at least. So I'm gonna go with Mario with my number one, but it was really close between those top three, if I'm being honest.
And regarding the figure thing, honestly, if Nintendo just made more amiibos to meet demand, I think they'd also make a ton of money. But like the last several times I've been in, say, like GameStop or Target or whatever, there's like two on the shelf, and it's like characters no one cares about, like Toad or and maybe like a Shy Guy or something like that. You know, all the popular ones sell out, and Nintendo doesn't remake them and restock them anywhere near as much as they should.
That's a good point too, because I've looked at them for just like tiny knickknack decorations for the Halloween party, and I'm like, even on Facebook Marketplace, I'm like, you got 5 for sale. How much? The guy will be like, message me for prices, and I'll be like, how much are those? And he's like, $20 a piece. And I'm like, no, no. Thought you're trying to get rid of them, but no. So I'm like, I can find those cheaper, and then I'll go on like eBay and look at a lot, and I'm like, no, I can't. No, I can't. That was actually the deal. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
All right. Number one here has been mentioned, and it is The Last of Us TV series. And it just the whole series was written and acted and shot so well, to the point that like you don't need to know anything about this game at all to enjoy this story in this series. But if you have played the game, like it's an amazing, like, how much it just evokes the feel of the game, and this the story. It's fair to say that because the game was often like watching a movie itself. Like there's a lot of like very cutscene heavy game, and a lot of really deep storytelling. So adapting it to a big screen isn't like a huge leap, but it's done so well. It's like and there's many places where it's basically like a shot for shot, adaptation of things that happen in the game. Basically just replicates it just straight up. But it does go its own way and like tells side stories. Like the story from Bill that we get like some some backstory of Bill in the game, but we don't get any of what we see in the series. And like that's one of the best episodes of the whole series. So it tells these kind of side stories that really elevate the base story and everything else. And it's just very emotional throughout, just heartbreaking, gripping scenes like in every episode. Like truly great acting. I don't know what they could do to make it a better adaptation. Just from strictly from what's in the game to what's in the series. So I gave it 9.5 out of 10 because I didn't want to give it a perfect score, but yeah, nearly perfect adaptation, and it's just very high quality. Well, I gave that a 9 as well. So
nice. Okay, my number one. I will preface this by saying I haven't seen The Last of Us because I don't have a Max subscription, so I wasn't able to weigh in on that one. I probably would like it from everything I've heard today, though. So my number one, Frogger the Game Show. It's as if Ninja Warrior and American Gladiators had a baby, and that baby was frogs, where the hosts sound as drunk as you need to be while you're watching it. I'm kidding. This is a real thing. It exists. I think it's still on Peacock, and it's a fever dream. No, for my actual number one, Silent Hill. If you know me, you probably saw this coming when it didn't show up earlier on the list.
The second one?
Oh, Do not get me started on this. Like the only good thing about that was the 3D ash that was floating around. The rest of it was terrible. But the first one, despite the inclusion of Pyramid Head, the first one did a lot of things right. I'll stand by the fact Pyramid Head should not have been in that movie because James Sunderland wasn't in that movie, but that's a whole different can of worms. But everything else, for the most part, it did well. It captured the look of the town. It captured the feel of the town, the what the town is, how it draws you in, how sometimes you can never leave, even if you feel like you've done everything right and you feel like you've gotten out. The camera work, like the over the top shots, simulating the fixed camera angles and all that. It just works. It worked so well for me, and it is still the high water mark for video game adaptations in my book. As a fan of the series, even though the games themselves have had their ups and downs, I feel this more or less did justice to what it was trying to do, and more so than most other things I've seen. So that's my number one. It hit all the right marks.
Also, as a bonus, it's a very rare movie where Sean Bean doesn't die.
Yes. Yeah, he's like one of the only characters who doesn't really, which is remarkable.
He's got 21 movies that he dies in, but not that one. Spoiler.
Not the psychological horror movie.
Yeah, not the psychological horror movie. Okay. Well, oh man. Does this have oh no, I was trying to see if they had an additional list of, oh, here we go. I was trying to add in how many TV shows he's died in.
Yeah, I can't forget Game of Thrones.
24. Okay, so he's died in 3 more TV shows, apparently, if those two lists actually match up. So
Wild.
but also impressive that he's died in the James Bond series, the Lord of the Rings series, the Game of Thrones series. I mean, this is impressive.
They're massive franchises, yeah.
Yeah, impressive stuff. Okay, well, do we have a clear-cut top so many there, Brett?
Oh, we do. I mean, we had a fair bit of
overlap
here in this one. Far more than we had in the Smashing Pumpkins top 10.
Yeah.
But we have in third, The Last of Us. Basically because we had 2 votes. I think if it had got third votes, it might have been first. We'll never know. Second is Fallout, and first is Super Mario from 2023.
Nice. I thought all 3 of those would do fairly well. I forgot Justin had not seen The Last of Us.
Yeah. If I had, like I said, I probably would have rated it pretty high.
I have an anime site I can give you after we're done that probably has it on there. So let me shoot that over to you when we're done here.
I think that's a slightly different adaptation.
Oh, right. That's good stuff. And there was still so many I didn't get to of the new stuff. Not to mention, I didn't get it. I wanted to, but I didn't. When we started this, I was like, I'm going to go back and watch Double Dragon and Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. And even some of the old, Nintendo Zelda and Mario stuff that was out there. And I didn't get to any of that stuff. There's just so much.
Yeah, there is a ton.
Much. Okay, well, let's close today with this question, and I don't know that we typically have the host play along, but I will. Since we're on the topic of video game adaptations, what would be your dream video game to see adapted into a movie or TV show? I will go first just because I thought of something and give you guys a second there. I would probably, actually, I joked about it earlier, but I probably would maybe even, I mean, Zelda could be good, but my top one off the top of my head here probably would be to see a decent Metroid movie or TV show, just like the idea of Samus landing on a planet that could be really atmospheric and kind of exploring it, and maybe, I joked with Alien, but obviously that's got to have a little bit of an influence on Metroid, I think, just with isolation and, you hear something in the distance of some strange planet, what was it type feel to it. So that could be really fun. And probably could come up with some really decent special effects to show some of the weapons from that game as well. Could be kind of fun. So, I'll go with Metroid for mine.
Good pick. I'm glad I actually did think about this question before we started. It was just it popped in my head like something we could talk about. And one thing that came to mind because I just finished playing it. Though I don't, I'm gonna. It's not my overall pick, but Elden Ring I think would be amazing. Like it's very like cinematic heavy. Like it like there's a lot of really awesome cinematic scenes in the game. I think it could translate into like an animated series like really well. And there's like tons of lore and like history in the game that could be used as well. But I think the one that I would love to see the most because I enjoyed the game so well is Horizon Zero Dawn. Um,
Ah,
I think it's really really fun characters and then like a cool setting. Um, who doesn't want to see robotic dinosaurs? you
yeah.
know.
Fair.
So I think that would be I think it could do really well, and I think the characters and stories are there to create something that would be pretty cool to see.
Good choice.
Oh, okay. I might somewhere in the back of my brain have a better pick than this, but this is the first one that came to mind, and I think it's pretty solid. Um, it's a sci-fi horror game called Soma. You could classify the game itself as like a walking simulator type, but it is very hard sci-fi, like plausible, and it deals with a lot of very, very heavy subjects as it goes on. I mean, yes, it does have like monsters in a research station at the bottom of the ocean and stuff, but underneath it all, the underlying message and the and narrative that unfolds as you play, I think is tight enough, and I think it is self-contained enough. It would adapt very well to the screen because it is sort of like playing a movie anyway, but actually seeing it, with higher production values and human actors instead of just rendered ones and stuff, I think it would work remarkably well. It would be a very depressing movie because it's a very depressing game by the end, but it would be good if they could do more or less a one-to-one adaptation of it and have it work, I think. So yeah, Soma is my pick for the game I'd most like to see adapted to a movie.
I'm thinking this more than that was my movie. But for my TV show, I'm gonna pick Fire Emblem Three Houses, but I don't know how they could ever do it because it's a triple viewpoint. So, but that'd be super fun if they could figure out a way to do it.
Hmm.
Maybe you
That
could
would be
watch
cool,
like
actually.
3 episodes, one from each house, do that twice, and then like the last one you pick this ending to the series, episode 7, 8, or 9, whichever route you want to go down. You like Clue on crack. Good times. Also be really fun if they ever made an Assassin's Creed movie, but that'll probably never happen. So
Hmm. One
Uh,
day.
yeah.
all right.
Well, on that note.
Uh,
Oh boy. All right, everybody. Well, I think that's gonna do us here. Did we decide, Justin, are you running a campaign? Is that what's happening?
sure, if we've got enough people. I know you said you were on board. I don't know if we've gotten a definitive answer from anybody
Okay.
else so far, so
All right. Well, potentially a little gameplay campaign here coming up for us with well, we'll keep that a secret, I guess. But
yeah. But it promises to be some pretty high octane, ultra violent action. So
yeah.
I'll leave that as a teaser.
Now are we gonna but it's the third one in the series, you said, right?
Wait, what? Oh, of course. Yeah. I
There we go.
mean,
All right. Okay, I think that's good to us here at the Fun Pod. This has been Cody and Justin and Brett, and we'll see you all next time for another
yeah.
episode. Take
See you
care.
guys.
Hey, fondlings and fondlers. This has been another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing, your favorite podcast. It's most people's favorite podcast, or at least so my mom tells me. You can check us out all over the place online at our homepage, www.fondpod.com or fondpodcast.com. You can also check us out across your social media sites, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your streamed podcast. Thanks so much.